Hey, welcome back to Screencrush. I'm Ryan Airy, and we're going to talk about the ending of Venom: The Last Dance and how it sets up one of the most lethal Marvel villains of all time, Knull. But I also think that Knull might not just appear in Sony movies. I think he could be the big bad in Avengers Doomsday.
Wow, that sounds really cool.
I know. So we're going to break down the ending and the post-credit scene and talk about how Knull can return, either in Sony's Something to Do with Spider-Man I Think universe or in the MCU.
I will annihilate your world.
Now, I'm going to break down the post-credits and all of these possibilities, but first, look at this sweet new Venom merch that I just got out of our basement. We've got this sweet My Little Venom shirt, the Bully Parker, denim, and this Dirty Dancing parody. And you can find links to all of these below. Oh my God! Oh no! Okay, there's a Venom symbiote in the box, and it's trying to take me over. Now, I cannot guarantee if your merch will have a Venom symbiote in it or not, but you can find out by hitting the link below.
Don't worry, person. Flame on!
Oh, thanks, Doug. And just a reminder to get your sweet Venom merch, check out our links in the description. Now, let's talk about this ending and what's next for Knull, and we're going to break down those post-credit scenes. So, spoiler alert for Venom: The Last Dance. Now, I've already gotten some questions about Knull, so first let me explain him. In the comics, Knull was like the original darkness of the universe. He was chilling in the dark, all content in his solitude. But then the Celestials started to create light in the universe. You know, suns and galaxies like we saw in the Eternals. So this enraged Knull, so he created the all-black sword, the one that you might know from Thor: Love and Thunder.
Is that the Necro Sword? That's cool. I've only ever read about it in stories.
And then he decapitated one of the Celestials, and that is the celestial head that eventually became Nowhere. Then Knull created the symbiotes and all the other monsters that we see in this movie. So the symbiote then formed a hive mind with Knull at the center. But then, after Thor defeats a Knull creation called the Grendel, the symbionts were severed from Knull, and then they formed a prison around him called the Clintar. Now, it's important to go over all this comic book stuff because it is going to inform when and if they are going to use Knull again. So the movie loosely adapts the comic book storyline Absolute Carnage. In that story, Carnage tries to assemble pieces of symbiotes from past hosts, and then this assembled codex would have allowed him to free Knull from his prison. Very long story short, Eddie chooses the life of his son, which allows Carnage to get the codex, freeing Knull. So then we get like a year's worth of stories where we know Knull is coming.
He's hungry. He's found us. And he's coming!
He fights the Guardians of the Galaxy, and eventually he arrives on Earth. Now, the Avengers are no match for Knull. Like, he's a guy who could theoretically take down Galactus. So Knull quickly assimilates most of the planet and turns the superheroes into symbiote hosts. And then Eddie has to rise to the occasion, and he not only kills Knull, but he also takes his place as the god of the symbionts. So that's the basic story by Donny Cates and Ryan Stegman. Now that we know that, let's actually look at these scenes. In the mid-credits scene, we see Clintar. This is the ball of symbionts where Knull is held captive at the center. He says, "Your champion has fallen," meaning Venom. The King in Black is awake. That means Knull. In fact, King in Black was the name of the seminal Knull storyline for the comics. And then he says, "Your world will burn and you will watch." This kind of makes no sense. So in the movie, Eddie and the symbiote together are the codex. When one of them dies, you know, like the Venom symbiote apparently dies, it should have kept Knull imprisoned. But he says that the King in Black is awake. And then saying "your world will burn and you will watch" is of course aimed at the audience, implying that Knull will return in a future movie that we will all get to see. So I'm guessing somehow the events in the movie freed Knull, or at least we're led to believe he'll be freed very soon.
After 10,000 years, I'm free! It's time to conquer Earth!
And then in the end credits scene, Cristo Fernandez's bartender character emerges from the rubble of Area 55. And then we see that little Venom spawn start to spark electricity. So this is hinting that he could become the character Scorn, who is a symbiote with the ability to control technology in the comics. Now, Venom: The Last Dance was apparently Tom Hardy's last time playing Venom. So all of this could be setting up Danny Rojas to become the new Venom. But now, you know, with new and improved electric powers.
Hey, I've seen this one. This is a classic.
Although, at Comic-Con, Tom Hardy did say that he would like to fight Spider-Man someday.
One thing that could tempt you to return would possibly be Spider-Man, but which Spider-Man?
Tom Holland. Without a shadow of a doubt.
So there is still hope for that MCU crossover here. Doug, what do you think about that? Doug? Doug? Hold on. Doug, where are you?
Oh, hey there, person. Don't mind me. I'm just out on the road having adventures.
Oh, well, I guess Doug's left the store, which means that we can leave the store. And that means, good news, guys, Screencrush is now going to come live to a city near you. You can come meet me and the gang live and in person.
Well, what happens at a live show anyways?
Oh man, Doug, we are going to have so much fun. We are going to show the things that they won't let us show on YouTube, and we are going to have super nerdy debates. Like, for instance, I enjoy Joker too, and I will die on that hill. We're also planning special guests, exclusive videos, and merch and trivia, but most importantly, I just want to meet you guys live and in person. We did a live show in February, and it was so much fun to just be surrounded by our fellow nerds.
Some of you are not good-looking people.
Is it going to be like a mini Comic-Con?
Exactly. The full list of tickets and dates are below. Our next show is November 14th in Boston, Massachusetts, so buy tickets now before we sell out. Now, back to what I was saying.
Oh, look, and I'm back too.
And Doug's back too. Now, I said earlier that there were two ways that the Knull storyline could go. First, let's talk about how he could be the big bad of all the Sonyverse stuff.
Person, please explain the Sonyverse.
You got it. So I know a lot of you guys already know a lot of this information, so I will be brief. So in the 2000s, of course, Sam Raimi made the classic Tobey Maguire Spider-Man trilogy. Sony decided they wanted to reboot the franchise in the 2010s. Basically, Raimi was going to take too long to make Spider-Man 4, and if Sony waited too long to make a Spider-Man movie, then the film rights for the characters would revert back to Marvel Studios. In 2012, remember, the Avengers hit, and suddenly everybody wanted an interconnected universe.
It won't be cinematic.
So then Sony mandated that all of these Spider-Man characters should be set off to create different franchises. The plan was to spin Amazing Spider-Man off into a Sinister Six movie, which is why we got that weird post-credit scene.
How many men did you have in mind?
I want to keep it small. Everything you need is already at Oscorp.
But that movie then tanked, so Kevin Feige convinced Amy Pascal to let Marvel Studios use Spider-Man.
On the roof!
Hey, everyone.
While Sony can make all the other movies they wanted, as long as those spin-off movies did not actually feature or mention Spider-Man. I mean, guys, this was so weird. At one point, they were even developing an Aunt May prequel story.
You serious?
But mostly, they stuck to trying to turn Spider-Man's villains into protagonists. This started with Venom and continued on with Morbius and now Kraven the Hunter. And we also had Madam Web, which,
He was in the Amazon with my mom when she was researching spiders right before she died.
Now, Madam Web seemed to be setting up a modern-day storyline where all of these Spider-Women were grown up. And maybe Madam Web herself could see the web of life and destiny that we saw in the Spider-Verse films. I think this movie was meant to be the connective tissue of the Sony multiverse. But apart from the Spider-Verse films, all of these spin-off movies range from meh to embarrassingly bad. And these films desperately want to be connected to the MCU. First, there was Tom Hardy being shoehorned into No Way Home. And then, we got that teaser that maybe he would get to fight Tom Holland's Spider-Man.
Yeah, what the fudge was all that?
Well, I don't even think that Sony, the studio, actually knows.
But you never know when Spider-Man is going to end up interacting with Venom because that's inevitable.
I think they would love for Tom Holland or any Spider-Man to be in this universe because that would then legitimize this universe. So they're teasing all these crossovers just in case they want these characters to meet after the new deal with the MCU expires. You'll remember they even tacked on that awful post-credit scene onto Morbius where Adrian Toomes appears in another universe, even though that's not how the spell in No Way Home works.
But I think a bunch of guys like us should team up. Could do some good.
Intriguing.
So all of this is clunky and bad and sounds like a Sony executive using ChatGPT to write a screenplay. But let's say that all of these movies do take place in the same universe. This means that the Sinister Six will eventually join up. But it won't be because of Spider-Man, I think. Marvel Studios currently has the rights to make Spider-Man films per their agreement with Sony. This is why we never actually heard the name Peter Parker in the movie Madam Web.
Does it have a name?
We're saving that for one of the games.
So the Sinister Six will assemble and they need to fight somebody, and I think that Sony was planning on that being Knull. It would make total sense if this world's bad boys and misfits have to gather together to fight this threat from beyond the stars. They could even give us a Man-Wolf movie that nobody wants, so then there's some connection to space.
What's Man-Wolf?
Man-Wolf is an astronaut John Jameson. Long story, point is he's in space and he can encounter the symbiote. The thing is though that outside of the Venom movies being kind of fun, all of these movies suck, and the Kraven movie is most likely gonna suck.
Confident to the fire!
So, unless they want to double down on Sydney Sweeney and make Julia Carpenter's Spider-Woman the new star of the Sonyverse, and I don't think Sydney Sweeney is going to come near this franchise, I don't see how any non-Venom movie makes any money for Sony. Hell, even Venom movies don't make money for Sony anymore. And all that's happening is Sony is further watering down the Marvel brand, which, by the way, Marvel was doing a fine job of all by themselves.
Let's just take the L and move on. I think it's been steadily great since Endgame.
So, if Sony is planning on setting up Knull to be their big bad, I have a hard time seeing that happen. But here's another option. Knull could be the bad guy in Avengers Doomsday.
What? Per person, Dr. Doom's gonna be the bad guy in Avengers Doomsday.
Not necessarily. So we have heard conflicting accounts from different leakers. Alex Perez of Cosmic Circus has said that Knull will appear in future projects. Now look, just to catch you up, there is some controversy surrounding Spider-Man 4, which we talked about in this video. Apparently, Marvel Studios wanted Spider-Man 4 to be like a street-level movie, possibly featuring the Kingpin, Daredevil, and Sydney Sweeney as the Black Cat. It seemed like the cloth suit at the end of No Way Home was setting up this street-level conflict. And then the Venom symbiote left in the post-credits scene seems like it was implying that we would finally get a loyal adaptation of the black suit Venom origin on screen. But then Sony wanted to bring back Andrew and Toby because, No Way Home made like $1 billion. Now, Marvel Studios has an agreement that they will make these movies and they will have creative control, but Sony still distributes the film, so they have some say in this. And according to leaker Daniel RPK, Sony won out.
Boy, have you lost your mind, because I'll help you find it.
So this brings us to Avengers Doomsday. Here's the gist of the story that they are adapting in the MCU. In the comic book story, Time Runs Out, universes are being destroyed by incursions. The thing we saw in Multiverse of Madness where universes turn to goo.
An incursion occurs when the boundary between two universes erodes and they collide, destroying one or both entirely.
So the Illuminati have to make a decision. Do they save their universe by destroying other universes? It is a great story with real moral dilemmas. It climaxes with Dr. Doom fighting these beings called the Beyonders and stealing their energy for himself. Then he takes the remnants of the multiverse to create Battleworld, which he rules as a god. He even wipes everyone's memories and then takes Reed Richards' wife Sue for his own.
Yeah, that's creepy.
It's super creepy. So, apply all of this to the MCU. In Avengers Doomsday, Robert Downey Jr.'s Dr. Doom goes up against some threat that will destroy the multiverse, and that leads him to create Battleworld, a planet comprised of different segments of the multiverse that is filled with variants, like the void we saw in Loki and in Deadpool and Wolverine. And according to Daniel RPK, Spider-Man 4 and other MCU movies will be entirely set on Battleworld, and this is why Toby and Andrew will apparently be in Spider-Man 4. And then, in Avengers Secret Wars, all of these variants will have to band together to defeat Dr. Doom, and they'll reboot reality, and the MCU will be reborn with all of these heroes living in the same universe. So now, let's take that same idea and apply Knull. What if Knull is awakened and then he becomes the big multiversal threat? In Let There Be Carnage, we hear that the symbiote hive mind stretches across universes.
80 billion light years of hive knowledge across universes would explode your tiny little brain.
So in Venom the Last Dance, we see Knull open up these portals. So what if he can also open up portals around the multiverse?
Marvel Sparkle Circle.
Now we wondered how the Council of Kangs would have fit into Marvel's new plans once Dr. Doom became the new villain. So what if Doomsday begins with Knull awakening and then wiping out the entire Council of Kangs? This would then establish him as the new threat to the multiverse. And as Knull comes to Earth, he tears through these different realities. He beats down the Guardians of the Galaxy, the X-Men, and other multiversal heroes. And when he arrives on Earth, guess who's there to stop him?
Macy Gray.
No, not Macy Gray, Dr. Doom. Doom would have detected the growing threat of Knull. After all, he's both a scientist and a master of the mystic arts, and he would have gathered together heroes and villains from across the multiverse to help him. This would mean he would arrive in Universe 616 to get the Avengers to help.
But Dr. Doom is a bad guy.
Yes, but he thinks he's a good guy. And remember, this Doom is a variant of Tony Stark. Tony was an ego-driven genius who was trying to control the world to save it.
That what we needed was a pseudo armor around the world. Remember that? whether it impacted our precious freedoms.
And I also think that it's thematically interesting that, casting Robert Downey Jr. as Doom was Marvel's way to course correct the multiverse saga. Essentially, they were trying to save themselves from cancellation, and that's exactly what Knull is. He is the void. He is the ultimate darkness. He is the cancellation of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So of course, this is who Robert Downey Jr. would have to face.
Today we are canceling the apocalypse!
So then Doom would rally the heroes of all of these realities to face Knull, and we would get to see all these heroes assimilated by the symbiotes, and then Doom would let them fall one at a time until he's finally ready to strike. He uses his techno-wizardry to defeat Knull and steal his power, and then he uses that power to become God Emperor Doom like he is in the comics, setting up Spider-Man 4, Battle World, and finally Secret Wars. This would be a great way to pay off that Knull tease by using this great villain in the MCU. It would also allow the Sony movies to get some of that sweet MCU legitimacy that they desperately crave.
Wow, do you think that's gonna happen?
No, not really. I think this would require Sony executives to realize that they're not good at their jobs and they can't get any more money out of this franchise. This would also require them to put art before money, and no Hollywood executive gets to keep their job that way. Then again though, I wonder if Sony is about to throw in the towel. If all of these movies keep flopping for them, then maybe they'll see the value in just selling the rights back to Marvel and Disney. That would mean that, by the time the MCU is rebooted, Marvel would finally have all of their characters back in one place, and we would finally be rid of to do with something about Spider-Man, I think. So guys, that's just what I think about Knull and the Ending Explained. Do you have any questions or theories? Let me know in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, welcome to the channel. Please subscribe and smash that bell for alerts. For Screencrush, I'm Ryan Airy.